But Jeff Pearlman is a 17-time author. All his books are great, exhaustively reported. And, Tony, I may be able to get you interested here. His next one's on Tupac. So when he writes about stuff, he digs in really deep, talks to a whole bunch of people. And I wanted to get him on because I saw episode 2 last night of the Cowboys doc, and I felt some of the NFL video influence on this a little bit. It was a little softer than I thought we were headed. I'm sure the bad stuff is up ahead, but I have not seen the entirety of the documentary. I have read the entirety of Jeff Pearlman's book on the Cowboys, which I assume is the starting point on how it is that they're doing this documentary. So, Jeff, thank you for joining us. Always enjoy your work. Also enjoy his YouTube stuff where he's a master storyteller, so he's doing some good and fun and creative stuff on YouTube as well. But what was your take here, Jeff? Have you seen the entire documentary? Does it ring authentic on some of the stuff you were reporting about?
I mean, it definitely rings authentic if you believe Jerry Jones is the greatest thing to ever happen to football, and nothing better has ever happened to football than Jerry Jones, who's the greatest thing to ever happen to football. So if that is your stance, 100% yes.
All right, so what's flawed about what's seems like universally celebrated, but I would have guessed probably pales in comparison to your book?
You know, I guess it's a couple of things. I'm not saying it's not entertaining or good TV. I think early on they way undersell Jimmy Johnson's impact, in particular the Herschel Walker trade, which is skimmed over, but which is the trade that completely and totally remade the franchise. And number one, you would think it was Jerry Jones's idea, and you would think it was Jerry Jones's implementation, when 99.9% of everything that happened with that trade was Jimmy Johnson and then Mike Lynn, the Vikings general manager, screwing up. And also number two, and a small thing that they skipped over completely that I was surprised, is they talk about Troy Aikman's arrival in Dallas, and they leave out completely that same year there was a supplemental draft where the Dallas Cowboys took Steve Walsh, Jimmy Johnson's quarterback, out of Miami, and they had this challenge, this head-to-head challenge that Walsh was winning, and that Jimmy Johnson really wanted Troy Aikman to feel uncomfortable and feel challenged by Steve Walsh. And then they flipped Steve Walsh to the Saints for all these more picks. Another thing that Jimmy Johnson did, completely and totally left out of the whole thing. And since I'm on a little rant, I will say lastly, I didn't need $1 for this. I didn't need attention. I didn't need to be in it. But I do feel like we live in an age where intellectual property is being completely ignored, and nobody really seems to care that there's a source material for stuff. And it's never, AI is doing this all the time with books now, where it just gobbles up books, spits out the information. You don't even know where it came from. And I do feel like there is a lot of stuff in this series that originated with my reporting.
All right, so that I may offer some of this to the audience, because all of his books are excellent, but one of the things that he did in his Cowboys book that floored me, because when I was reading it, I'm like, wait a minute, what happened here with the Cowboys, and how does no one know about this? Michael Irvin basically should have been charged with attempted murder on a teammate, because he went after an offensive lineman with a pair of scissors and just got him near the jugular, like arguing over seniority and haircuts. Should have been charged with murder from the reporting of Jeff Pearlman. How do they attack this story on Netflix? Because like I said, I have not gotten to the other 6 parts of this story, but the content dilution of Hollywood makes this stuff so in exchange for access, you get diluted versions of the story. This story, I only read in your book. I didn't know how you got anybody to talk about this.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been attempted murder, not murder, because Everett McIver, the lineman he stabbed in the neck with the scissors, did not die. And originally in the local Dallas newspapers, it was reported as there was this mishap and there was this exchange and blah, 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 but everyone's okay. And I had, I think it was Kevin Smith, the Cowboy defensive back, who said to me first, he's like, you know about the scissors, right? And I'm like, not really. He's like, oh, you need to know about the scissors. And then I kept talking to people, and basically Michael Irvin, Everett McIver, an offensive lineman on the team, is sitting in a barber chair in training camp, and they bring in Vinny the barber to cut hair. And Michael Irvin walks in, and McIver's in the seat, and Michael Irvin says, seniority. And McIver's like, I'm in the seat. He's like, yo, seniority. And Everett McIver's not a rookie at this point. And all the other guys in the room are like, yo, Everett, don't leave the chair. Don't leave the chair. And Irvin's like, get the F out of the chair. And Everett McIver stands up, shoves Michael Irvin. Michael Irvin shoves him back, grabs Vinny's barber scissors, stabs Everett McIver in the neck. Everett McIver falls to the floor, bleeding out of his neck. They rush in paramedics, and part of the deal ultimately, because Michael Irvin was already on probation, is if he gets caught for this, he is going to prison. This is a clear violation of probation once you get charged.
Probably.
And
You think?
and I'm just being honest. Just being honest. I'm not. You'll never hear me like the. I wrote a book about the '86 Mets. ESPN did a 30 for 30. They interviewed me at length. It was a beautiful project. I was really happy with it. I didn't make a dime. I don't care about making a dime, but I reported the hell out of that. I reported the hell out of that. I spent weeks of my life reporting on that. And when a documentary comes along and doesn't add all credit source material, just as an author and speaking for other authors, it does bother you a little bit. Just being honest.
It's okay. I was laughing more at the idea that Michael Irvin would have violated his probation by trying to stab a teammate in the neck with scissors in the jugular.
It was a moment. It was a moment.
Well, does the documentary feel sanitized to you? Or like when you say you're on a rant, do you feel like you're getting an honest version, or you're just simply getting what Jerry Jones wants us to eat as part of his marketing and propaganda arm?
I feel there's a lot. They did a lot of amazing work with the footage. They did an amazing work with a lot of the guys they had come and sit down. Steve Pearlman is interviewed. I mean, that was a random and interesting pull. Charles Haley sat down. You don't see him do that many interviews. Like they definitely did the work. Like, to give them credit, they gave the work. They did the work. They put in an entertaining documentary. I just think Jerry Jones, like, the Cowboys have not won in 30 years. They haven't sniffed a Super Bowl in 30 years. And this idea, here's a success story of the NFL because his franchise is worth a ton of money and Jerry Jones is worth a ton of money and he got his family involved. When the number one problem with the Cowboys for the last decade at least is that Jerry Jones is making all the decisions and he's never been good at making football decisions. And that feels very, very sanitized. Just being honest.
Jeff, is there anyone that you weren't able to get on the record when you wrote Boys Will Be Boys that maybe this series is going to have? Have you seen?
Sure. I didn't get Aikman. Trey Aikman wouldn't talk to me. So I didn't get Trey Aikman. So that was, and he's a big part of it. And he's great in the series. Again, they got a lot of really good people. They got Emmett, they got Aikman, they got Irvin, they got Haley, they got Jerry, they got Switzer, and they got Jimmy. Like, they did their work. I give them much credit for that. So it's not about that, to be honest.
And I don't want to discredit them there, Jeff, but when Jerry Jones signs up for the story of his life while he feels like he's overcoming cancer and says, hey, one last time, let's tell this story, of course everyone's going to participate, just like Apple and Kraft got everyone to participate there. What did you make of the way the story is told? Because what I was saying yesterday is, it seemed like Jerry Jones, in his own documentary, with good amount of control over what he was doing, decided to give Jimmy Johnson more credit than Bob Kraft was giving Bill Belichick in the 10-part series they did.
Yeah, no, he gave Jimmy Johnson credit. I just think, honestly, God, if we're all being honest here, Jerry Jones is very wise to buy the Cowboys. It's a great investment. Interestingly, Donald Trump, when Jerry Jones bought the Cowboys, Donald Trump said he overpaid and the franchise is never going to be worth what he thought, which I always thought was funny. He deserves a lot of credit for buying the franchise. None of Jimmy Johnson, everything Jimmy Johnson did was masterful. Like everything. To be honest, if you want to do a documentary about this era, it should be called How Jimmy Johnson Changed the Franchise and everything he did, from the Herschel trade to the Steve Walsh trade, everything he did, the pressure on players. And Jerry Jones was a really savvy owner who put a lot of money into the franchise and has made himself an uber billionaire. But the football story itself is Jimmy Johnson, wise drafts, savvy trades.
Jeff, do people understand how crazy Charles Haley was?
No. I mean, in a way I feel bad. I have actually said it in the past that I feel like in a lot of ways that's one part of my book that I have some regret over, because he was battling severe mental illness. And I just wasn't mature enough or smart enough when I was writing that book to really delve into it. But he was a guy who during meetings he was pleasuring himself during meetings. He shows up and he's under a blanket listening to whoever's giving a talk, pleasuring himself. And also they touched on this a little bit, which I thought was good. His ruthlessness toward teammates, the cruelty he used to bring toward teammates. Chad Hennings, an old defensive lineman, was a really good example. Like, he could just be ruthlessly mean and also as wildly unpredictable as you can find.
Did you feel or see any sanitizing, Jeff? Did they talk about the mental illness involving pleasuring himself in meetings? Like what? Because I saw a little bit of what they did with Charles Haley, and they went around the fringes of it, and they did say he urinated on an assistant coach's desk. He tried to fight a head coach, but the Charles Haley stories were legendary well beyond that.
Yeah, no, actually, it's funny. I just saw this. My favorite Haley story, and it's kind of light humor, is when the Dallas Mavericks drafted Jamal Mashburn, and Jamal Mashburn comes to town, and they give him a tour of the Cowboy facility to meet the Cowboys, just a PR thing. And if you remember, Jamal Mashburn used to have a gap between his teeth, like kind of a pronounced gap. And Jamal Mashburn is walking through the Cowboys locker room, and all of a sudden he hears someone, and it's Charles Haley, scream out in front of everyone. Jamal Mashburn's probably 21 years old. Hey, Jamal, now that you're making that NBA money, how about getting your teeth fixed? And like Jamal Mashburn just feels like vanishing into the carpet. They definitely went light on Haley with the Cowboys because Haley was, crazy.
One of the great all-time lunatics of all time in that sport, correct? And I say that, and no, we did not cover with great grace his mental illness, but his talent, what he made people endure was far beyond the pale on sports was not equipped to deal with his kind of crazy.
No, he was a very, 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 very difficult teammate. And when you were adding him to your franchise, and he would probably acknowledge this now, when you added Charles Haley to your franchise, you were making a concession that our locker room is either mature enough or insulated enough that we can deal with this.
Jeff, what were some of the best examples of Switzer just not having control of that team?
Oh my God. I like when he showed up he showed up before when they played the Steelers in the Super Bowl. I think it was Super Bowl 30. And he's out getting wasted at these parties. It was a very thing Jimmy Johnson was like, look, we're not going to do this. He was out there dancing with the players, dancing with women, fooling around like the whole week leading up to the game. He was on this wild, I'm just going to live my life. I love how I actually think Barry Switzer is one of the best characters in sports. And I'm not saying he was a good NFL coach, but I just think he put it all out there and lived that way. And he was 58 years old, drinking like his players, partying like his players, fooling around like his players, just living the life leading up to the Super Bowl with this real mentality. I'm probably never going to get here again, so I'm damn well going to enjoy it. Is
there anything new to uncover from this period of time in this documentary, Jeff? Like you've already told the story, so are you saying you've seen the whole thing? You're saying it's a pale reflection of the real story as you described it exhaustively in your book?
Yeah, I mean I don't want to dog it. It's a very entertaining documentary because that story is entertaining and they got amazing footage and they did the interviews. I don't want to suggest it's not worth watching. It's a very good and enjoyable documentary, but is there new revealing, holy cow, I didn't know that. I didn't really get much of that, but others might.
I want to talk to you about your Tupac book in a second, but I was wondering, you are a very good ombudsman on bad behavior in the media and where it is media can be compromised. You're old school in a number of different ways. I've been trying to find somebody who can discuss with me intelligently the idea that ESPN has just sold 10% stake to the NFL and the NFL Network. You received that news and thought what?
I thought it checks with everything that's going on with modern media right now. I mean, it's the same, if you think about it, it's the same thing with the documentaries we're getting now, even The Last Dance and this new one, where there's always someone with control of the message. And it used to be, I mean, Dan, you and I have been in the business a long time. Like it used to be, you were the final word, right? ESPN, we're going to cover you, but we're going to write honestly about you. And it really, perception is just as strong as reality, if not stronger. So if ESPN is now not doing much about CTE, as an example, is that because of this cross ties with the NFL? Has the NFL put pressure on them? Is the NFL saying, look, we'll give you this, but we want you to lay off of head injuries in sports? The look of it is terrible. Just absolutely terrible. And it just suggests that there's very little, if any, independent media anymore.
Okay, so what do you imagine is the truth around Spike Lee's documentary on Colin Kaepernick getting spiked and the timing of all of that when it comes to simply what's happening here ends up getting truth diluted by powerful entities? And, Jeff, I don't think people care.
That's the worst part of it. I actually, it's interesting. I used to work for a Bleacher Report. This is where, to me, my birth for me personally. I used to work for Bleacher Report, and you would write these 8,000, 9,000, keep called BR Mag, and you would write these long, long pieces, and it was great, and it was awesome, and it felt like old SI, old ESPN. It was only like 5 years ago, and then I think at some point they realized, wait, why are we spending money on quality journalists doing quality journalism when we could just put up an interview with an NBA player where we ask him softball questions. And I just think that's where we are. Colin Kaepernick, it's not worth the heat. It's not worth the heat they're going to probably get from someone with the White House. It's not worth the heat they're probably going to get from the NFL. It's just not worth it for them. The bang for the buck, as they view it, it's just not there. And the thing is, I remember when I was a young writer at Sports Illustrated, and SI would do stuff just because it was the right story to do. Like, this is an important story. We're going to throw everything at it. We're going to put Ken Caminetti on the cover of the magazine talking about steroids in baseball. Even though Major League Baseball is going to be pissed off about this, we're going to do it because it's the right decision to make. And now there's so much overlapping between corporate and editorial that stuff like that almost never happens.
Only God Can Judge Me. The Many Lives of Tupac Shakur is available for pre-order now. I don't know why you would tackle this degree of difficulty on your reporting on something. This is a trough that so many people have been at. How did you do it better and differently than the others?
First, I want to say the song you played at the beginning of this segment, it was very Tupac-y. I think Tupac would have 100% approved and probably jumped in for a verse on that. So that was really good.
If Pablo Torre finds out, I suspect not, probably.
Yeah,
unless
maybe not.
Probably not near the crossword puzzles if Pablo Torre finds out.
I just always thought there was a definitive book of the. I love Tupac as an artist. And what I did differently, I interviewed 650 people. I traveled to everywhere he lived. I knocked on doors of everyone he knew. I sat down with his sister. I sat down with his godmother. I just lived it for 3 years because I really, really wanted to tell not an estate sanitized story, not a story that's, been regurgitated. I just really wanted to get into his life and understand him. And that was for 3 years, that was my obsession.
Dan, I think that was Fitty.
It was Fitty.